2022
conference will
meeting of
now be
the Board of
recorded.
Directors. I call the meeting to order, and in accordance with NRS 116-31083, this meeting is being audio recorded. A unit's owner may record an audio tape or any other means of sound reproduction a meeting of the executive board unless the executive board is meeting in executive session. The unit's owner, before recording the meeting, must provide notice of his or her intent to record the meeting to members of the executive board and other unit owners who are in attendance at the meeting. The meeting will also be recorded live and uploaded to the website to be viewed later at the conclusion of the meeting. Is anyone recording the meeting? Okay, no one. Please take this moment to silence your cell phones and other electronic devices that make noise as a courtesy to others as we conduct business. And I would remind those who are attending online to please mute your microphone so that we don't pick up all of the background noise in your house, unless if you're speaking and addressing the board. Also in accordance with NRS 116-31085, Section 3 and Section 6, the board met for the routine executive session on January 25th, 2022 to consult with their attorney for any personal or for any proposed or pending litigation the association is involved in, conduct hearings and or review individual resident appeals regarding violations of the governing documents and or delinquent assessment accounts. May we now stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
There is a quorum of board of directors, with the exception Brian Donahue is not here. Brian, are you online anyplace? Okay, he's not. So 6 present at the meeting. At this point, we'll have approval of the agenda.
I move that the agenda be approved as written here.
Second. Any comments? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Okay, motion carries. Approval of minutes.
I move to approve the December 16th, 2021 board meeting minutes as submitted.
Second. Are there any additions, deletions? Hearing none, we will proceed to vote. All those in favor of approving the minutes of December 16th, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Okay, motion carries. President's report. Most of you have seen the banner in the entrance drive to Anthem Center that contains the message to run for the board. Excuse me. This signals that soon we will be entering our annual election season to elect members to serve you on the Sun City Board, Anthem Board of Directors. As of this date, 7 individuals have filed their application to run for the board's 3 open positions. The final date to file as a candidate is February 4th by 4 p.m. and the campaign begins on February 15th with the drawing of ballot positions. Typically, March is the month where you'll have the most opportunities to meet with the candidates and hear them in different venues. The start of the election season also signals the final 3 months of the current board of directors. The new board will hold its organizational meeting to elect its officers on May 5th. In view of this, I want to convey to you several thoughts. First, I want to encourage all of you to be actively involved in the election process. Take the time to go to different candidate forums to hear what the candidates have to say and to ask them questions. Be involved to make an informed decision. One of the first opportunities to meet the candidates will be at the candidate forum and the following meet and greet sponsored by the election committee on Sunday, March 6th. And second, I want to provide an update on the work of the current board on finishing our goals and major priorities before the end of our term. Some of the major projects that we'll be acting upon in the coming months are the restaurant, and Sandy will cover this in her report. But I would say that once the contract has been negotiated, we will have it in an updated business plan that includes catering that we'll present at a community forum prior to the February board meeting. At that meeting, we will then plan to vote on the approval of the contract and to also vote on the hiring of an interior design firm to then begin the process of getting the restaurant space ready to be in operation, hopefully by mid to late summer. 2, pickleball courts. Management is getting ready to approve a contract for a design firm to develop a site plan along with estimated costs for the construction of at least somewhere in the neighborhood of 6 to 8 new pickleball courts at the Liberty Center, maybe more, depending on what the design study shows us. With design and cost information, we can then move to identify funding sources for the project and begin to move quickly to move this project to the construction stage. Third, sound and lighting improvement at our entertainment venues. In early February, the board will be meeting with our consulting firm to receive their report on recommendations for upgrading the sound and lighting in our entertainment venues to support both stage and live performances. With this information, we can then also work to identify funding sources and begin to undertake these needed improvements. I would just note that tickets are now on sale for the Mark O'Toole Variety Show that will be held at 3 p.m. on the first and third Wednesdays of every month. The premiere of the show is March 2nd in Freedom Hall. And as I was online looking at tickets, to this date, well, a month in advance, about half of the tickets have already been sold for the show. So we're excited about that, and you'll be seeing more publicity about that as time goes on. Capital improvement projects. In February, the board will meet with management in a workshop to review the list of capital improvement projects that were submitted in 2021. At that time, we'll develop priorities to begin the process of planning and getting the top priorities into the budget process. Approximately 26 projects have been submitted. And last, the legal review of the restructuring of clubs, committees, and service groups. This has been about a 6-month ongoing project that is now nearing completion. In March and April, we hope to be able to begin holding meetings with various constituent groups to explain and review the proposed changes. In this process, we will have developed a consistent process and policies for all of the clubs, committees, and service groups, and for the board to recharter them by resolution. This process will bring all of these groups into compliance with our governing documents, and most importantly, will strengthen the insurance coverage that is currently extended to these groups under our policies. Above are just some of the major priorities that the board is working on to bring to completion. Other board activities include ongoing work to revise the community standards and ARC guidelines, approval of copyright infringement policies and handbook for SCATV, working with the villa communities to clearly identify how their costs can be lowered or better controlled, and a host of other issues that often arise on almost a daily basis. In all of this work, I want to express my appreciation to all of the people of this community that help make it run and to provide services to all of the residents of our great community. The volunteers who serve on our committees, service groups, and provide leadership for all of our clubs are all heroes for what they do in being the heart and soul of our community. To quote a person that served to inspire many of those of my age, volunteers are the only human beings on the face of the earth who reflect this nation's compassion, unselfish caring, patience, and just plain loving one another. Irma Bombeck. And we can easily say the same about those volunteers who serve Sun City Anthem. This ends my report for today. Chief Operating Officer's report, Sandy?
Yes, good afternoon. I'd like to start with the restaurant update. The Board of Directors met on November 16th in a workshop to review a proposed food and beverage agreement that Western Hospitality Group submitted for consideration. The board worked through the agreement and produced a list of deal points that the association attorney was directed to include in a revised agreement. The board also designated the COO, Sandy Seddon, and the CFO, Teresa Gaudet, to work with the attorney to finalize a draft agreement and then meet with Western Hospitality Group to do the necessary negotiations. We will be meeting with Western Hospitality Group tomorrow, Friday, January 28th, to review our SCA proposed changes. The goal is to have a finalized draft agreement for the board's consideration at the February 24th meeting. Western Hospitality Group has the draft agreement with our comments, and I have had brief conversation with Bobby Heath, the CEO. He remains enthusiastic and looks forward to our meeting tomorrow. I just want to take a minute to ad-lib. I put together this management report, and I put together a list and a summary, basically, of 2021 accomplishments by department. This report's now 9 pages long, and I'm not going to read those, but what I want to tell you is I hope you take the time to look at this report in the board book to see all of the things that actually took place during 2021 and what management and our residents accomplished. There's one exception. I will highlight the COVID Task Force 2021 accomplishments, and then I'll move on to the departments. So the task force provided content and resources for COVID-19 website postings, e-blasts, and letter communications, updating SCA residents on COVID-19 news and related topics. They drafted and disseminated mailers to SCA residents offering communications options. They maintained bi-directional liaison status with the City of Henderson entities. In conjunction with the City of Henderson, the task force facilitated the administration of more than 32,000 COVID-19 vaccines to SCA residents and residents of adjoining communities. SCA volunteers contributed more than 9,100 hours in this effort. They coordinated with the city to implement improved processes in facilitating and administrating 1,400 COVID-19 booster injections to SCA residents who waited 2 months from availability to repeat positive experience at SCA. They conducted bi-weekly conference calls with the SCA COO and task force members representing the Community Patrol, the Community Service Group, Emergency Preparedness Service Group, Neighborhood Watch, and SCA TV to monitor COVID-19 trends, evaluate current response, and strategize new activities. And I personally want to thank that task force and all of the volunteers that participated in that effort. Now moving on to community standards. The community standards top concern for the month of January deals with contractors hired by residents and SCA and their conduct. We have received several complaints to include the conduct and damage to common areas caused by contractors, whether they are your landscapers or builders working on a small project or a big project such as a home addition or a casita. All contractors doing any kind of work on your lot need to be respectful to the neighbors and the association's common areas. Loud music, profanity, and other behavior which is unbecoming of a quality operation will not be tolerated, and any damages to the common areas caused by contractors will fall back to the homeowner. If the damage is not corrected, the association may repair such damages and assess the cost of the repair to the owner. So do your neighbors and the community a favor. Make sure your contractors are treating your neighbors with respect, and make sure they are not damaging the common grounds with their equipment or in any other manner, because you are responsible for their actions. Moving on to fitness, repairs to the strength equipment at Anthem Center were completed on January 24th. Repairs to stationary and recumbent bikes at Liberty are almost complete, with 4 returning to working condition. The remaining bikes are waiting for parts, which are estimated to arrive by February 3rd. Parts suppliers in the fitness industry, much like everywhere else, are experiencing manufacturing and delivering challenges, and we apologize for the delay. Anthem Center fitness equipment updates are in delivery planning mode, with estimated delivery around mid-April. New spin bikes will arrive at the Independence Center in early February, and estimated delivery date is February 4th. And the fitness class schedule for February has been updated, so see the relay for more information. Moving on to activities, on January 7th, Friday forum discussion was about home fire safety with the Las Vegas Fire Department. January 10th was our first farmers market, and it was well attended. And the next market will be on February 14th, and we'll be back with more vendors and choices to pick from. January 12th was comedy night with Joe Caponera, lots of laughter and good times. And January 13th was cutting the cord with our own IT guru, Ryan Saffel, and he had over 200 plus registered that afternoon. January 14th in Freedom Hall was Michael Grimm singing his tribute to the Southern soul and music of Ray Charles, Otis Redding, and Stevie Ray Vaughan, along with many more. January 23rd in Freedom Hall was the Summer of Love celebration with the timeless music from the 60s and 70s. The 24th was comedy night with Lorenzo Clark, and he combined comedy using a little bit of magic, and the laughter was heard down the hallways outside the Indie Lounge. January 25th and 26th was the blood drive, where registration was requested but not required to schedule a life-saving donation. And January 29th in Freedom Hall will feature the wonderful Madonna tribute with her greatest hits from 1983 to the early 2000s. January 30th, we're taking a bus full of members down to the Smith Center for their first time since COVID to see My Fair Lady, and lots of good things are coming up with tickets on sale, including ABBA Fab, Rod Stewart Tribute, Kelly Clinton, and our new afternoon Mark O'Toole variety show beginning March 2nd. If you need help signing up for any activities or have any questions, you can call or email the activities department. Moving on to facilities maintenance, replastering of the 2 spas at Anthem Center is complete and both are open. The 2 new replacement windows for the fitness area at Anthem Center are scheduled to be installed next week. The new baseboard for the Independence Center fitness room has been installed, and our elevator and wheelchair lifts have been inspected and everything has passed. The hot water heater for the backstage restroom at Anthem Center was replaced, and the flow switch for the indoor pool at Anthem Center was replaced. The Ansel fire protection system for the kitchen was tested and everything passed. The rear kitchen doors that were damaged during the delivery have been replaced with new ones. The rigging for the lighting at Freedom Hall was inspected and 1 minor issue was found, and this has been repaired. The condensing unit 5 at Anthem Center had a refrigerant leak, and that was repaired. And plans are being worked on by the landscape architect for work on Hampton, DePinto, and our east lawn here at Anthem Center. The proximity reader at the front door at Liberty Center was replaced, and pickleball had a new storage box installed. The programming of the new lighting controls for Liberty Center is scheduled for February 2nd and 3rd. Just another ad lib. Those lights are on. We know it. I know folks that are up and around there. We ordered new light panels, and when they arrived, they were faulty. So it's under warranty, but we had to reorder, and the contractor has to come back out. 2 new blowers and motors for the Liberty Center warm water pool are scheduled to be installed tomorrow, and repairs were made to the Liberty Center outdoor spa filter. A new gearbox and backup batteries were installed at the Pinnacle Village gate, and the final utility cart for the maintenance department has arrived and is being used. Work on the concrete pad at the north lawn is still in progress. Communications, the website received 380,000 visits in 2021, with the most popular pages being the welcome page, activities, shows and events, COVID-19 information, clubs, and then resource centers. We processed The Communications Department processed 1,480 requests for registrations for e-blast subscriptions. More than 150 e-blasts were sent into 2021, and by the end of 2021, we had 4,360 residents that had at least one person receiving an e-blast. That's a net increase of 1,055 homes from the year before. Approximately 60% of the homes in SCA are reached by e-blast now, and the goal for 2022 is to reach another 1,000 homes. More than 150 new online forms were created and processed and tracked in 2021, and more than 250 new documents were uploaded to the website in 2021, not including updates or previously uploaded documents. The Spirit Magazine Accounting Department was responsible for recording and tracking approximately $390,000 in advertising revenue. Spirit Magazine produced 947 pages of information in 12 issues, not including those in the relay. And the Communications Department is in the process of revamping the website, Spirit Magazine, e-blasts, and creating an updated logo. The IT department wrapped up the end of the year with the kickoff of planning of large-scale projects for 2022. We began assessment of our internal network and networking equipment. We are currently assessing infrastructure, which networking equipment, cabling, phone systems, and the Wi-Fi network upgrades. The website, we're testing Windows 11 for compatibility with our systems and upgrades to server-side software. IT is assisting with website redesign and creation and integration of back-end systems, including payment portals and room scheduling and calendars. And we are finishing up interviews for a new position that was approved in 2022, another IT position that will report to our own Ryan Saffel. And then finally, I have to say good luck to our CAM, Elisa Ramos. I'm sad to announce that this morning she tendered her resignation, and her last day will be February 16th. And I want to express my sincere appreciation to her for all her hard work and dedication to SCA, and she will be missed, and I wish her success in her future endeavors.
All right. Thank you, Sandy. Director's comment period. Barry?
No.
Forrest? Sorry, Richard?
None at this time. None.
I did want to address the villas. They were expecting a meeting either this month or next month. We're still aiming for next month. However, the SNWA, Southern Nevada Water Authority, came out here and visited, and they cannot quite decide yet the essential or non-essential nature of the grass in the villas. And it's a huge issue for them in aesthetically and financially, not necessarily in that order. So we're waiting to have that meeting. It's supposed to take place in about the next 10 days, I've heard, and hopefully we can meet soon. And the villa responsibility matrix that we've been working on is now completed with input from the attorney and Hayes, our insurance broker, and that will be sent to the residents of the villas at the time we announce the meeting. So villa homeowners, hang in there, coming soon. Also, one more thing. Elisa, I will miss you like crazy. That country club on the other side of town, wow, what a gain for them, but what a loss for us. It's been a true pleasure working with you and getting to know you better. For those of you that don't know, Elisa and I worked together in 2001 and 2002 at a management company here, so we go back a long way. So congratulations.
All right. Thank you, Wendy. Paul?
Nothing at this time.
All right. So this brings us to an update on the Anthem Community Council that was submitted by Art Schutz, our representative, and will be presented by Wendy Linnell.
There is not an update this time. I'm sorry, it should have said there wasn't one this time. There is not. There will be one in February.
When is there, do you know when their next meeting?
I don't know right offhand. Sorry, we can look in the website real fast. Sandy, is that what you're doing?
It's in February.
It is.
And we are hosting.
We are hosting it
Yep.
here, yes. And I would just encourage all of you to watch for that information. It will be certainly announced on the e-blast. We give their website information on the e-blast, and would encourage people to come and express their views. So, all right. City of Henderson report. Jerry Schroeder did prepare on behalf of Councilman Shaw report, and Wendy Linnell will present that on behalf of Jerry.
Okay. Infrastructure, the Anthem Sidewalk Project. Construction of sidewalk around the Anthem Parkway at various locations. Hold on, cataract surgery, have to have the readers on. Pedestrian on the loop, enhancing safety in frequently used pedestrian corridors. Construction is now scheduled to begin this spring and last approximately 6 months. The funding is from the City of Henderson gas tax, and the approximate cost is $3 million. Infrastructure, the slurry seal process. The process of slurrying public streets is a typical pavement preservation method used in all jurisdictions in the valley and many across the country. In the desert, one of our worst enemies to our pavement is the sun and the heat driving out our pavement. The slurry process recoats the surface and extends the life of the asphalt, keeping it flexible. Pavement maintenance applications have shown through research by industry to help protect and extend the life of the asphalt roads 15 to 20 more years than its intended useful life. After extended research and trials in the city of Henderson, it is found that the type 2 slurry with a crack seal provided is the best solution and length of life for the money spent. Type 2 slurry seal is a mix of small aggregate, emulsion, filler, and water applied with a truck-mounted spreader box. Slurry applications correct small roadway deficiencies, provide a weather-tight barrier, preserve asphalt pavement, and improve skid resistance. What has been applied in the Sun City Anthem area is exactly how we expect the Type 2 slurry to look and function. The biggest misconception is the comparison of Type 2 slurry to asphalt placed on a new road. It is not a new asphalt installation. Infrastructure, mobile camera on the Anthem Parkway. The camera platform was deployed at the request of Anthem Country Club in response to a small spree of thefts they had in their community. The cameras were placed there because it was believed that the suspects were gaining access to the community by hopping the wall that runs along Anthem Parkway. Okay, so that's an aside. Now we all know what that was for. Development, Anthem Mini Storage. Existing mini storage facility at 2950 Bicentennial Parkway that is proposing an additional 3-story building with 355 storage units. The new 6th building would replace some of the existing covered RV storage. It is currently scheduled for the February 1st City Council meeting for action and approval. Infrastructure on Eastern Avenue, Horizon Ridge Parkway to Anthem Parkway. Rehabilitation of pavement and ADA enhancement at various locations. Currently in design and scheduled to advertise this winter with an anticipated construction schedule of 4 to 6 months. The funding is from the Regional Transportation Commission Fuel Revenue Indexing, or FRI. The approximate cost is $4 million. Horizon Ridge Parkway, Green Valley Parkway to Seven Hills Drive. Pavement rehabilitation with ADA enhancements at various locations. Just beginning design, scheduled to advertise for construction bids in the late winter, with construction anticipated to last approximately 6 months. The funding is from the Regional Transportation Commission Fuel Revenue Indexing, or FRI. The projects underway are Mira Inspirata, southeast corner of Vera Inspirata and Via Da Vinci, senior apartments on 7 acres, 189 units. Centurion at Via Centro at Via Inspirata, 24 acres, 764 unit mixed use townhouse, apartment and retail. Inspirata Town Center, Parcel 2A along Via Centro north of Via Inspirata, a Lennar single-family detached community of 105 units. Inspirata Town Center Parcel 1 along Via Centro north of Via Inspirata, KB Homes, 245 single-family attached and detached units. Development along Volunteer. There are several housing developments under design and construction along the south side of Volunteer, from Via Inspirata to Gillespie. Along with this development, improvements are being made along Amigo, and the extension of Bermuda will be constructed to the south of Volunteer. Infrastructure. The Henderson Police Department recently broke ground on its most state-of-the-art substation in West Henderson near Volunteer Boulevard and Via Inspirata. The facility will be home to the HPD's dispatch center, police academy, as well as a future K-9 memorial site. Development as Center for Excellence Workforce Training, just north of the new police station and across the street from Haas Development. A 21,000 square foot workforce development and training facility is being developed for opening in early 2023. It is a collaboration between the City of Henderson, the College of Southern Nevada, and will train future employees in diverse areas of skilled vocational work. Events. Vegas Golden Knight watch parties. Cheer on the Vegas Golden Knights as they face divisional rivals and other top-tier competition on the road to the NHL Stanley Cup playoffs. Enjoy a live DJ, souvenir giveaways, food trucks, and more. The Water Street Plaza's spacious outdoor setting, surround sound, and Jumbotron allow for a comfortable yet electric atmosphere to catch all the exciting action on the ice. Free parking is available at the Water Street Parking Garage directly across the street from the Water Street Plaza at 240 South Water Street. Saturday, January 29th versus Tampa Bay Lightning. Friday, February 25th versus Arizona Coyotes. Friday, March 4th versus the Anaheim Ducks. Friday, April 1st versus Seattle Kraken. And Sunday, April 10th versus the San Jose Sharks. The Sweethearts Cornhole Tournament, Friday, February 11th, 7 to 10. The ladies only tournament guarantees 3 games with double elimination, $30 per team. Call 702-267-5717 for more information. And the location will be the Arroyo Grande Sports Complex and Pittman Wash Trail at 298 Arroyo Grande Boulevard in Henderson. Another event, Caged Bird, a celebration of Maya Angelou, February 19th at 3 p.m. and 7 p.m. 2 performances at the Water Street Plaza Amphitheater, 240 South Water Street. One of the most prolific writers of all time, Maya Angelou was an important figure in the American Civil Rights Movement. Through her trailblazing work, she continues to influence and inspire current generations of artists. Join us as we honor Angelou through live music and poetry readings as performed by the Vegas City Opera and local poets. COVID-19 resources. The City of Henderson has a page on its website, cityofhenderson.com, Our City COVID-19. Look at the report for the whole thing, containing multiple resource sections, including links to reopening, testing, databases, news, press releases, and assistance resources for both residences and businesses. City Hall is open and face coverings are required when visiting city facilities. Many city services are now available online to avoid having to come into City Hall. Contacting the City of Henderson. If you have a question, concern, or request for the city, the most efficient way to have it addressed is to submit it through our Contact Henderson system at contacthenderson.com. Choose an appropriate topic, subtopic for your subject matter, and it will be directed to the appropriate staff person. You will then receive a response from city staff regarding your submission. Following this procedure avoids the extra time necessary for mayor and council staff to receive, review, and evaluate your communication, and then ensure it is routed to the correct department for action. That is the end of the report. I just have one more thing to say about contacting Henderson. I don't know how many other board members have, but I've received a couple of 3 requests from homeowners. Give me the name of this person over this project or this person at the city. They've made it clear, and they've also told Anthem Council the same thing for people who want to contact the city about Anthem Council. Go through this process, and they assure us that it's faster and more efficient, even though it might be counterintuitive because you don't have the name of the person to put in. But if you're clear on where you want it to be referred to with their pull-down menu, it will get to where it needs to go. Thank you.
All right. There are no opening of bids. We now move to the first member comment period. Members are permitted to comment on agenda items only during this time. Comments shall be limited to 2 minutes. Residents that use their time to make comments in order to make inquiries of the board directors may or may not receive responses to their inquiries at this time, but your comments will be noted accordingly. The president may interrupt or terminate a member's statement if it is personal, abusive, obscene, irrelevant, or exceeds the time limit. Comments will not be accepted from owners in advance at the meeting. Comments shall be limited to 2 minutes. And if people online wish to comment, they may do so, as well as people in the room. So do we have any comment, Cart?
David Berman.
David Berman, Valley View Village. Mr. President, in your report, you indicated that 7 members have filed to run for the board so far. On Monday, the weekly e-blast gave the names of 6 members who filed for the board. So would you please be able to provide at this time the name of the 7th person who I presume has filed since Monday?
Yes, and that will come out in the e-blast on Monday.
So you said today that there's a 7th member. You
Yes.
said it to the public, but we can't be told until next week who it
Yes,
is.
I
disagree with that policy, so there's no reason, why would it be kept a secret since you stated that a 7th member had filed?
Okay.
You should have said, I will tell you next week that whether anybody else has filed, but you revealed that a 7th member has filed.
I can comment on that if you don't mind. Nona Tobin was the final application received.
Thank you.
You all heard that? You now know the person. All right. Any other comments? No? All right. So now we will go to financial reports, where Teresa Gaudet will review, and then the board will have a motion for the acceptance of the unaudited. All right, Teresa.
Good afternoon. Look at the snow in that slide. I don't know about you, but that's exactly why I moved here. For those of you that may be new to Sun City Anthem, or for those of you who could use a refresher, before I start with the financial results for the quarter, I'd like to give a brief overview of the structure of the association and of accounting, so you'll have a reference as to what the financial statements are going to show. Is this? There you go. Yeah, but it just gets. No, we're good. Okay. Excluding the clubs, each of the entities listed here are subject to assessments. All 7,144 homes have an assessment from the main association. The other homes in Pinnacle and the duplexes in the villa neighborhoods pay an additional assessment on top of the main association assessment that's for their specific neighborhood. The reason the clubs are included here is to show all the entities that we are required to include in our consolidated financial statements as well as for our tax return. No, he's good. This is not working too well. So I put this slide in here to show a little bit about the accounting methodology that we're required to use as a homeowners association. The association follows fund accounting. So there's a fund to budget and account for operations. There's another for the reserve fund, and a third for equipment classified as personal property. Please note that the main association has an operating, reserve, and equipment fund, whereas the neighborhoods, Pinnacle, and the villa duplexes have an operating fund and a reserve fund. Again, in the case of the clubs, they maintain their own bank accounts as well as financial statements, and then we have a process at the end of the year where they provide them to the accounting department, and we incorporate them into the financial statements. So what I did here, just to give everybody a brief overview, is include a copy of the 2021 coupon book. And I wanted to walk through the components of it because there's a direct correlation to this, the assessments, and how things appear on the financial statements and what we are funding. So if you look at it, the budget is prepared around the end of the third quarter. Usually it's approved in October. So we don't really have all of the information we need for finishing that year out, but the best information that people have available at the time is used to create the following year's budget. So when you see the line that says 2021 operating assessment, right? That's being looked at to say, what is the revenue that we need to cover some of the operations in the following year? But if before that year is over for that existing year, we think that there's going to be a surplus or a deficit, that is taken into consideration in the subsequent year's budget. So here, when you see the annual amount of $129.48 for 2020, when you multiply that times 7,144 homes, it's a little in excess of $334,000. And that $334,000 was returned to homeowners in the form of a credit or reduction to their fourth quarter assessment in 2021. Now, had all the information been available when the budget was put together and things lined up better, instead of having that credit, the surplus credit would have just been larger to accommodate that. So that's what supports the operating fund. Then there's another component to the assessments that's for the reserve funds. And there's two pieces to that. One is the capital assessment and the non-capital. You know, so capital are the large purchases, whereas non-capital is something like painting. So we just went over the slide that was just for the main association, but here we've listed all of the associations. And again, these are shown net of the prior year surplus credit. So when you follow these numbers across, you'll see each of the assessments for the various associations. And then the fourth quarter main assessment credit, the $334,000, is below. So in total, we had $8,700,561 in assessments. But I just want to point out, when you look at this slide, for the main association, the annual operating assessment of $6,700,000 $629,632 gets reduced by the $334,000 credit. So when you're seeing the number on the income statement, you're going to see the net number of 6.2 million. There's different ways that we could have put it there, but that's just how the system was structured. This is not working. So since the assessments make up the largest portion of the funds that are contributed to the association to cover the operations, I thought it was important to carry the $8,700,000 over from the previous slide to this one to show here's all the assessments. As of December 31st, the end of the year, we had $55,685,000 that was a balance of which we had not yet received, right? And so the accounting department, our accounts receivable specialists, work with the homeowners for missed payments. However, the homeowner doesn't always pay. After following a process that takes about 90 days, when it's determined that payment is unlikely, the receivable is sent to our outside counsel who performs collection activities, right? But if you look at this slide, we've got 0.38 of 1% of assessments that are sitting in collections, and we have 0.25% in-house that we're working on collecting. And this is as of December 31st. Subsequent, I could just talk about the in-house ones. That 22,000 balance is now down to under 10,000 relative to those assessments. Sometimes people are out of town. They could be in the hospital. There could be a death. So we try to work with them in-house first before sending it to collections. But there's other times when you just know that that internal process isn't going to work, so we have to move it forward. One of the points I wanted to make is the combined is less than 1%, and our outside attorney has told us that the average in Nevada for homeowners associations is that they're carrying a receivable balance at the end of an assessment period quarter of about 10%. So that tells us that, we're doing a pretty good job here of the homeowners contributing to the benefits that they're receiving. Now, this slide just talks about assessments. The next slide, we put a little more information on here, right? So in addition to assessments, which you can see in the first column, the red color is the current year, and the bluish green color is the prior year. So our outstanding assessments have actually decreased. In addition to assessments, we have late fees, violation remediation, and miscellaneous, which make up very small balances, but they are items that we carry on our balance sheet, so we wanted to present those. And then the last piece is compliance fines. So people who are, not putting their garbage cans away or not having the appropriate maintenance of their property and so on and so forth. That number went up about 18,000 in 2021 compared to 2020. And that's due to a number of reasons. You could see there were 16 homes before and 25 now. But in 2020, for a 7-month period from April through November, there were no compliance hearings because of COVID, and therefore without hearings you couldn't assess fines, and the higher your fines go up, then the more collection efforts you're going to have to follow those fines. So what we have here is about the highest level preview that you can get of the main operating fund operations for the 12 months of the year. And the reason why I'm focusing on just the main operating fund is that it represents more than 95% of all of the revenues associated with all of the associations. So it shows total revenues of 7.2 million as compared to budget of 7.9. And I'll go into the reason for those variances later in the presentation. The expenses actual were 8 million, but budgeted was 8.8. And then you could see the deficit of 925,000. That was built into the budget to be able to carry forward. That was the $129 on the coupon page that I showed. So on the next slide, what I wanted to do in addition to assessments, I wanted to point out the top 5 sources of revenue or funding for the association. And I want to be careful in, using general terms like revenue or funding because they have different meanings for different people. So I'm just going to keep it simple and say that it's a source of funds coming into the association. We had the asset enhancement fee, which generated $713,000, and I'll go into more detail with that. We had the Spirit Magazine ads, as Sandy mentioned before. We generated over $390,000 in revenue associated with that. We have escrow document fees of $168,000. And what that is, when somebody is going to list their home and accept an offer, they have to provide the purchaser with some paperwork associated with the association. It's called a resale package. And there's a NRS, I believe, regulation associated with that. Then we have the entertainment events, paying for these entertainers. And we have the fitness group classes. Because asset enhancement fee isn't necessarily obvious what that means, the next slide is going to walk you through that. So when a home is sold by someone who purchased their home in April of 2004 or after, the new buyer, as part of the property closing cost, pays a property transfer fee, an architectural review fee, and an asset enhancement fee. And the reason why it's after April 2004 is because with the original, I guess, CC&Rs, right, it didn't exist. And so they couldn't implement something and make that apply to somebody who was trying to sell their home if that restriction or covenant didn't apply when they purchased it. And so anyone who sells their home today, but they bought it before April of 2004, this asset enhancement fee would not apply. So everyone that it does apply to, they're paying a $100 property transfer fee, a $100 architectural review fee, and the asset enhancement fee is 1/3 of 1% of the purchase price. So if the purchase price of a home was $450,000, the asset enhancement fee would be $1,500. So let's just throw some fun facts in here. So in 2021, 533 or 7.5% of the homes in Sun City Anthem were sold, as compared to 409 in 2020 and 391 in 2019. Of the 533 homes that were sold, 392 of them were subject to the asset enhancement fee. So these homes had an average sale price of $545,000, and I've just listed here, the different categories. 75 sold in the 400s, and less than 400, and 118 in the 400s, 90 in the 500s, and so on. So when we go back to the slide where we list this, you could see that for those 392 homes that were sold, we collected $713,447 in asset enhancement fees. And later I'll go on to explain where they show up, because in the past, we've budgeted for them to recognize them all as revenue. But as of this year, there was a change in accounting method, so we're required to adopt that, where instead of recording it all as revenue immediately, we only record it as revenue as we spend it, and the rest is listed as a deferred revenue on the balance sheet. And that's because there needs to be a matching principal of those funds when they're spent. But the reason why I wanted to bring this slide back up, and I've added an additional column, is to try to illustrate the corresponding direct expenses. So the asset enhancement fee, it's not like we have anything that's directly we have to do to generate that. Whereas with the Spirit magazine ad, we pay we collect $392,000 in revenue, and that's through ad sales, right? But we have expenses of approximately $339,000, and that's to pay the commission on the advertise, to print it, and to mail it to everyone. So it's actually, still generates net a little positive revenue, and there's no net cost to the association. The escrow document fees that I talked about, where we are providing information both to the seller when he gets an offer, but also at the closing table for the title company for the demand, that generated $168,350. And I didn't list a direct corresponding expense because we don't track that. But we have two individuals that work in the accounting department, and a fair portion of one of their jobs is spent just on doing these activities. But again, in this case, the amount of revenue that's generated exceeds the overhead expenses associated with it. And then I thought it was important to show with the fitness classes that in 2021, we generated $90,000 in revenue, and that comes from the individual class participants. They may pay $3, $4, $5, or they have a pass that they've purchased, and that is recorded as revenue. But the corresponding direct expense is what we pay to the different fitness instructors. And as a result of COVID, we've had to limit the class sizes, and in addition to limiting them, there are less participants. So that's the reason for the revenue being significantly less than the expenses. No, it did not. Okay, so since we talked about the top 5 sources of revenue, I thought it would be good to share what the top 5 expense categories were. Now, when I talk about the top 5, when you go to look, if you choose to go look at the financial reporting package, there really are 2 other categories that are larger than this. One is cost of sales, but I didn't include that because usually there's a correlation between, we're holding an event and we're collecting the money back, or so it's not an overall overhead expense. Whereas these that are listed here, payroll and benefits, $3.9 million, utilities, Anthem Council Beltway, insurance, and landscaping are more of a standalone expense. So in terms of utilities, insurance, and landscaping, they're pretty self-explanatory. I will show you a slide supporting the payroll and benefits, but before I go ahead and do that, I just wanted to talk about the Anthem Council Beltway. So they were talking about the separate meeting and the other association that's responsible for maintaining the roads. Sun City Anthem contributed $633,430 towards their budget in 2021, which represents slightly higher than 50%. And the contribution is based on the number of rooftops of all the, housing develops here that participate in it. On an individual home basis out of the 7,144, that equates to $89 a household. But you don't get a separate assessment for that. That's built into the budget for which the main association assessment covers. And that amount for 2022 was budgeted at $129,000 per household. I'm sorry, $129 per household. Yeah, we'd all go broke, right? So the next slide, I just wanted to share with you because we can all agree on the financial statements that payroll taxes, and burdens is a really big nut. And I wanted everybody to see, you know, the employee organizational chart that existed in 2021 so that you could see by department, you know, the accounting, community association, communications, human resources, fitness, activities, and facilities, the positions that are supporting the association. So the following 3 slides show for the main operating fund, the revenue and expense broken out to different high-level categories. And if you would like to see a more granular or detailed breakout, then you could look at the fourth quarter 2021 financial package that is in the board book online, because, you know, one of these line items might have 6 or 8 different individual categories that roll up into it. So when we look at this, right, if we look at the largest variances, we talked about the $334,000 credit, and that's a variance because at the time the budget was put together, there was not an awareness that there would be that much in excess funds. Then when we look at the AEF fee, as I said before, there was a change in accounting method. So in the past, it was budgeted for here. So it looks like we didn't generate any AEF fees, but in fact, we generated $713,000. Of that, we used about $66,000 into 2021, and the balance is carried forward to future years for use, and it is not individually budgeted for. So when you look at this, if the $334,000 credit wasn't presented in the manner that it was, it would look like the revenues were higher, right? If we tried to normalize this by taking out items like the $400,000, then in layman's terms, we would have exceeded budget by about $100,000. Not accounting for the AEF being $300,000 above the budget. You know, and this is good news for the association. It just means that we generated more revenue and brought more funds in, and it's helping the financial strength of the organization. So on the next few slides, it's just going to show again, various expenses rolled up, and just like with the revenue, if you look at the financial report, you can see the detail behind it. So the 2 largest variations on this page are the general and administrative expenses and payroll and benefits, right? In the general and administrative expenses, there was a line item, $300,000, that was budgeted for the restaurant. But because the restaurant was not open yet, those funds weren't spent, and so it's showing up as a positive variance that expenses were less. And I know that's one of the concerns I've heard from residents that, you know, how are we going to fund the restaurant? But for the last few years, there already has been in the budget an allowance to help support the restaurant, and this just helps illustrate it, right? Okay, and that's a positive variance that the money wasn't spent. When we look at payroll and benefits, the actual amount spent was about $100,000 more than what was budgeted. And the reason behind that is after the budget was approved, the board approved two different positions. One was the director of communications and one was the assistant director in the fitness center. And so those expenses are in here, but when the budget was prepared, those were not accounted for. So here's another page of some additional expenses. And the professional fee variance is mainly due to budgeting for and not using a strategic plan consultant and not using a significant portion of funds that were budgeted for an engineering consultant. The actual building required less repairs and maintenance than what was budgeted for. So that was a significant piece of the repairs and maintenance underspending. And utilities were less than budgeted due to water conservation efforts and an overall reduction in the use of the three centers. I would be remiss if at this point we didn't take a big shout out to facilities and landscaping, as they have had year-over-year utility savings due to their conservation efforts. And when you look at the bottom line number, actual total expenses were greater than revenue recorded here by $751,000, which is $173,000 less than what was budgeted for in the 2021 budget. So next I'd like to show what impact does that have on the association's members' equity, right? So when you have assets minus liabilities, what's left over is your members' equity. Or we generate revenue, we have expenses, and what's left over at the bottom, if there's more revenue than expenses, is a positive contribution to members' equity. So this slide is showing how was the 2020 surplus used in the 2021 budget and the impact that it had. So based on the audited financial statements at December 31st of 2020, members' equity was $1,509,358. And whatever your balance is at 12/31 of the prior year is your starting balance January 1st of the current year, right? Then we talked about that they had approved in the budget the use of the prior year surplus of $925,000. And then the board also approved to return to owners the $334,339, which was done in the fourth quarter. So that left the association with a minimum balance of $250,000 if this is what really took place in 2021, meaning that actual and budgeted numbers were identical, but in reality, the actual numbers are different than budgeted. So I'd like to go on to the next slide and show that before we go into the details, I just want to make a point that these numbers are preliminary because they are based on unaudited financial statements. When the audited financial statements are prepared, these numbers will change. And I'll just give you an example, right? When the income tax return of the association is prepared, there will be a difference between what we expensed in the financial statements and what the actual taxes are. But at this point, we don't know, is it going to be slightly higher or slightly lower? But when those actual numbers are incorporated into the audited financial statements, it'll change these numbers slightly. And the numbers that will change are the ones that are on the line 2021 unaudited operating deficit. So members' equity at the beginning of the year was $1.5 million, right? When we finished the year, we had a deficit of $751,000. So if everything just stopped then, it would leave a balance at December 31st of $757,000. Now, in 2021, when the budget process was going on with my predecessor and other people, the outlook was that there was potentially going to be a $920,000 amount left in members' equity. And so they budgeted that for use in the 2022 budget. So if you were just looking at it at this point in time, it looks like there might be a shortfall in next year's budget. So I don't have all of the remedies listed here, but I have, some of the more frequently used methodologies for closing a budget gap, but this is by no means all inclusive, right? So in 2022, the association can spend less than the amounts budgeted, which has been the history over the last few years. They can generate more revenue than budgeted. They can use the asset enhancement fees to support the budget shortfall, right? Or they could have a special assessment, right? So if the shortfall gap isn't closed by spending less or generating more revenue, then the board will have to decide which of the latter two methods, or perhaps even another method, is used. But one of the things I want to keep in mind, because I don't want people to be concerned to say, oh my God, we have a shortfall, there's going to be a special assessment. At December 31st, there's in excess of $600,000 of asset enhancement fees that were collected but not spent. So that gets carried over into future years. And then in addition, in future years, there will be more asset enhancement fees generated as long as the market doesn't change drastically and homes continue to be sold. So that's basically it for an operating fund. We're almost done. So the next thing I'd like to do is explain the reserve fund. And I know I've put, this isn't very concise. Oh, thank you. So I know this isn't very concise, but I wanted to provide more information for your reference, right? Since the reserve study is the foundation for the reserve fund, before we go over the reserve fund financials, I just wanted to give a little foundation of how the reserve study works and what information is captured, and then how that is the foundation for the budget and the process moving forward. So a reserve study is performed every 5 years, and then it's updated every 2 or 3 years. And the study is performed by an outside firm that specializes in reserve studies. So what the reserve study does is it captures the assets of the association along with relevant data, including but not limited to a description of the asset, the date it was placed in service, its useful life, its estimated remaining life, and the estimated replacement cost over the next 30 years, right? And included in the study is an annual budget of projecting funding requirements to meet the estimated cost of repairing, replacing, or restoring the assets over the next 30 years. And I keep emphasizing the next 30 years because if an asset has an estimated useful life of 3 years, then that asset is going to show up in this study 10 times because it's assuming a replacement is going to take place every 3 years, right? So this reserve study can be based on various methodologies to say how much we as an association should fund. The two most common, and I say common, I really probably should use different words, but because one isn't common for this size of the association. But anyways, they are threshold and baseline. Threshold means that a targeted percentage or a percentage range of the anticipated costs are to be funded, whereas baseline targets, just funding for the next few years of anticipated costs. Threshold is used for the main association reserve, and baseline is used for Pinnacle and the neighborhoods. I'm not 100% sure, but I believe the target for the main association is 70 or 75% in that range, and now we have a funding that's greater than that, right? So we take this study, and that's really the basis for preparing the budget. And of course, the budget then correlates to the assessments that show up on your coupon book, right? So asset repairs, refurbishment, and replacements sometimes do not occur in the same year as the reserve study indicates as the replacement year. So for example, they could say that, all the chairs in this room should be replaced this year. And that's how it's going to show up in the reserve study. But if we can get another year out of them, then we're not going to replace them just because that's what the reserve study says we should do. Annually, the association files a report with the Nevada Real Estate Division to report pertinent information about the reserve fund. And really what they want to make sure is that we are using qualified companies to do the reserve, and that we are maintaining our funding balances at a reasonable level associated with those recommendations. And it's really to protect each of the homeowners to make sure that the reserves are being properly funded. So unlike the operating fund, where if we have a surplus, it might be returned to the homeowners in the form of a credit or reduction of the future year budget, with the reserve fund, those surpluses stay in the fund. And the reason is, it could be many reasons, but like for me, the most basic reason is, if we have funds that we didn't spend, it's because we didn't replace the asset today, but we're still going to need to replace that asset, whether it's tomorrow or next year. So today, the main association reserve fund at December 31st is a little over $14 million. And that represents far in excess of the 75% of the reserve fund projected requirement. So again, in the financial report, you will see a balance sheet and an income statement related to the reserve fund. The actual revenue was budgeted at $2,111,000. I'm sorry, the budget was at 2.1 million and actual was at 2 million. There's a couple of pieces that are contributing to this variance, right? One is, and I would say the major thing was that we earned less interest on our investments. But another thing that I just want to point out here is that the organization received a $35,000 rebate from the Southern Nevada Water District. And in this presentation, that $35,000 is reflected as a revenue. And it's just showing that it was a source of funds coming in. But if we were following generally accepted accounting principles, instead of showing it as a revenue, you would show it as a reduction of your expenses. So I just wanted to point that out. And also, what you see here is actual expenses of $399,000. That represents actual money that went out the door to buy equipment, and I will show on a future slide. But from an accounting perspective, we don't record that full $399,000 as an expense when we have our consolidated financials and when we do our tax return, because any personal property type of asset that we buy is subject to depreciation rather than allowing us to expense the whole amount. So I wanted to separate here the pieces that were cash outflows from how we need to report it for financial statement reporting. So on the previous slide, I said that we spent $398,748, right? So in the reserve study, and Criterium is the name of the company that performed the reserve study. So if you ever hear that terminology, you know what that relates to, right? So of the projects that they recommended or showed in the study would be due to replace, we only spent $111,000 on those. We then had projects that were in the reserve study that said they should have been replaced in 2020, but we didn't do the work in 2020, or we didn't complete it, and it carried over into 2021, so that was $37,000. And then there was one asset, namely the ice machine at Liberty, that wasn't in the reserve study, but because it's a common asset of the association, that's where the funding is supposed to come from, right? And then we had reserve projects that in the study were for 2022 and beyond, and for a number of different reasons, they were done earlier. So in 2021, the total amount spent was $398,000. Okay, we're almost done. So the next slide just refers to the main reserve fund, right? The amount that was budgeted. So through all of the assessments of the 7,144 homes, $2,033,450. But the actual repairs that were done just associated with that were $111,000, which means we've deferred, you know, the repairs, the restoration or replacements of $1.9 million, right? And so one of the things, again, we need to do a shout out to facilities and landscaping, you know, the staff, the various committees, because what this says is they are doing a phenomenal job keeping the assets of the association in good shape, and therefore we don't need to replace them as quickly as, you know, the reserve study is indicating. And since we're talking about, you know, projects, we're going to show here any projects that were greater than $75,000 that were either still open in 2021 from the prior year, or that were approved and being worked on in 2021. So you had the parking lots, which were started in 2020 and approved in 2020. The total cost approved was $126,000 with a contingency of $12,000 for a total amount of $138,000. In prior years, $88,000 was spent. In the current year, $37,000 was spent. So the total amount spent was $126,000, which was just the total cost, and none of the contingency had to be used. So that project is complete. Then in 2021, there were two projects that were approved by BAIs through the board. One was for the fitness equipment. Again, the BAI approved a total cost of $299,000 plus a 10% contingency for a total approved amount of $329,000. In 2021, $73,000 was spent, and that $73,000 was purely that the equipment was ordered and deposits were made. So you will see this on next year's project summary as well. And then the other one is the community patrol vehicles. Again, it was approved in 2021 for $116,000 based on the bids. In the current year, $3,000 was spent, and that's because we had to put down a $1,000 deposit on each of the three vehicles, you know, to have them ordered. And that ends my presentation.
All right, so okay, so you've looked at, review the investment report, review collections report, review quarterly litigation disclosure statement that's in the board book, and there are no bad debts. So at this point, I'd accept a motion for the acceptance of the financial statements October through December 31st, 2021.
I'll move to accept the financials.
Second.
Okay. Any discussion? David, this would not be an appropriate time since a motion has been made.
I just want to make it clear to residents that we're accepting the statements, not approving them. That's a big distinction.
Right. So, any discussion? If not, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, motion carries. We will now move to the consent calendar.
The consent calendar. The Board of Directors may take action on all consent calendar items with one motion, accepting the recommendations as stated on the agenda item. The consent calendar may include committee reports, service group reports, and/or ad hoc work advisory group reports that may not contain board action items. I say that the board accept the monthly committee reports as listed, 1 through 15.
Second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, motion carries. Now we'll move to committee and service group action items. Election committee.
Right. Committee and service group. Okay, I propose for the election committee, appoint Alan Bagan to serve a 2-year term beginning on February 1st, 2022 and ending on January 31st, 2024.
Is there a second?
Pardon me, second.
Yep.
Okay. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? Okay, motion carries.
I propose to appoint, or the election committee proposed to appoint Patty Cooksey to serve a 2-year term beginning on February 1st, 2022 and ending on January 31st, 2024.
Second.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Okay, I know Ellen is in the room right there. So he's one of the new volunteers who's been appointed to the election committee. Is Patty in the room? Okay, no, but I did want a chance to, if they were here for people to meet them.
Can I say something?
Yeah.
I know Alan, and I know that he took, I forget the exact title of it, but you took the academy from the Henderson Police for civilians, correct, Alan? That's how seriously our volunteers take their tasks. And not only did he do it, but he liked it, right? It was interesting. So thank you for your service, and thank you for taking it seriously. Welcome to the committee. Yeah.
Okay, Sun City Anthem TV.
Oh. I move to approve the appointment of Frank Johnson for a 2-year term as president and general manager of SCA TV Service Group from January 1st, 2022 to December 31st, 2023.
I second. Okay, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, motion carries. carries. Community Service Group, update on leadership positions.
Okay, the community service group met and they still would like to do their collaborative leadership, but they actually know after reviewing their bylaws that they would have to change their bylaws. So they are putting forth a president and a vice president.
Okay.
And Sandy and I are working with them. It's this situation is not specifically addressed in their bylaws, but a quorum of their board is 25. So Sandy's team has created an email address, and there's going to be an email mailing to vote for the president and the vice president, and Sandy and her team are going to facilitate that. And we should have the president and vice president before the board here on the February agenda.
All right, very good. Covenants Committee, I move to approve the appointment of Shirley Akradovic to serve as chair for a one-year term, February 1st, 2022 through January 31st, 2023.
I'll second that motion.
Okay, all those in favor of this appointment signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, motion carries. Community Patrol.
Yeah, Community Patrol, I vote to approve the appointment of Ed Miller as the Community Patrol Chief to serve a one-year term, January 1st, 2022 through December 31st, 2023.
Second. All those in favor of this appointment signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, motion carries. Audit Committee.
I move to approve the appointment of John Marshall to serve as a member at large, effective immediately through September 1st, 2022.
Second.
Okay, all those in favor of the appointment of this appointment signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, motion carries. We now have the COO approved reserve expense items paid in the month of December. Do you just want to review those, Sandy?
Sure, we had a heritage pool plastering in the amount of $10,147.50 for both the indoor and outdoor spas. And then we had another reserve expenditure of 2 blower motor replacements for the warm water pool and outdoor spa at Liberty in the amount of $4,390.61.
All right, thank you. Now moving to board action items, we have BAI 0127 2022 01 insurance.
To approve an additional annual premium in the amount of $3,582 to include the community pools into the existing property policy and excess earthquake policy with Philadelphia and Insurance Company of the West, respectively, as submitted by Hayes Companies of Oregon for the period beginning February 12th, 2022 and ending October 31st, 2022. This includes a prorated premium amount of $2,672. That's the full annual premium in the amount of $3,587 from PHL, and an annual premium of $910 from the excess carrier to be paid from operating.
Second.
All right, any discussion? Lisa, could you please provide how this came to light and just a little bit background on this?
Sure. If you'll look down at box number 3, I do give a little bit of background in the BAI, but we wanted to ensure that all of the pools and the cost to reconstruct all of the pools in case of a catastrophic event were added to the excess earthquake policy. And when we went to have that added to the excess earthquake policy, they realized that we also needed to have it written in the property policy, the underlying property policy. So they did not have the numbers in time when we did the October renewal. We had to do some fishing for some additional premiums, and this is what Hayes provided us.
All right. That's the rationale. Any other discussion? Comments? Okay, hearing none. All those in favor of approving the additional premium in the amount of $3,582 to include community pools into the existing property policy and excess earthquake policy with the Philadelphia Insurance Company of the West, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. All right, unfinished business. Wendy?
The adoption of SCATV's volunteer handbook, we've come a very, very long way. We're 98% there. Based on the conversations that the board has had and the board has had with Adam the last few days, I spoke with Doug yesterday, and there will be 2 sections coming out of the handbook. So taking things out are easy because they're going to end up in the document that
Right.
Adam is formulating for us.
All right.
The issue is, in order to bring this forward to the board and vote on it, it has to be at the same meeting that we vote on the document that Adam is working on, because the handbook refers to that document. So we will have it on that agenda, on the same agenda, and it will be approved at the same time.
Okay, well, we can talk about that. But
We could, if we think we could do it.
But I think the intent of the board is to move this so that it's taken care of in February.
I was hoping we would have Adams on the February agenda too. Well, we can talk about it some more.
Yes.
Yes, we all want to get it as fast as possible.
Yeah, it's gone on too long.
We know.
New business, adoption of the revised facilities usage manual regarding resident memorials. And
Second? If that was a motion, I'll second.
no, I'm getting ready to make the motion. I just
No, okay.
need to find it.
Withdrawn.
Hold on.
Find the language.
This is on page 176 of the board book. And the motion is to clarify for memorial services for residents what would be charged. And so this would be stated in this way, and this would be the motion, to have section 3.5 of the fume that deals with reserving facilities. The following steps shall be taken when requesting space for an event. Request form. Space may be rented by residents for private parties only. For example, birthdays, anniversaries, wedding, religious celebrations, etc. Space may be reserved for a memorial of a SCA resident at no charge if space is available. This would include the room, setup, and any AV equipment needed. Additional costs apply if linens and tech support is requested. For room rates and equipment costs, see the SCA Activities Department Scheduler for a listing of current rates and applicable forms for reservation required. So it helps to clarify that the basic setup, podium, setting up the room, providing AV equipment would be at no charge. And that if you wanted additional services, there would be a charge for those things. But it helps to clarify this and set this in policy. All right. So, is there a second on this?
So moved.
I guess, okay. Who's seconding? Forrest. Okay, thank you. So that's the motion. Any discussion? Okay, hearing none, all those in favor of this change to the facilities use manual regarding resident memorials signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Okay, next is approve audit chairman's recommended BPM update to section 7.7.
I move to approve the update to the board policy manual, section 7.7.
So moved.
What, could you cite the page?
It's page 197. Our guide says it's 199, but
197 to 199.
Could you talk a little bit about what this change, kind of summarize the changes?
well, even though this is the policy manual, we're doing some education here. We added this first section, the purpose of an audit, so residents and future board members understand what the auditor really does. The big distinction is management prepares the financial statements, gives them to the auditor, he examines them, tests them, writes a letter confirming balances, and then he writes an opinion on it. Many people think the auditor prepares the financial statements. That's not true. All he prepares is a one-paragraph assessment. These financial statements meet the standards of generally accepted accounting principles, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah, so I think one of the things it has a clear statement of what the audit committee is and what it does.
Right, well, I was going to add that the second section, mission of the audit committee, that's bringing the language up to industry standards. We kind of had a confusion, muddle of what the audit committee really does, and we've kind of adopting industry standards here. And then we changed the composition of the audit committee that the board would have the option of appointing 2 at-large members. We have sort of a shortage of CPAs right now. So far, I'm the only licensed CPA in the audit committee. Last year, I think we had 3 or 4. We had members who were former audit partners, really knew their stuff. And we're not getting that through the finance committee and the boards. We need the board of directors needs the option to reach out in the community more to find those people. And then under the independence and confidentiality, we're making it clear here that directors can attend the meetings. They're not closed to directors because the audit committee is an appendage of the board. And we're also requiring that monthly reports be submitted to the board book. I'm doing that voluntarily now, but making that a requirement in this update.
Okay, good. Good explanation of the key changes. All right, any other comments?
I am still uncomfortable with some of 7.71 and 7.7.4. I think where it's, the last sentence in 7.7.1, however, an audit is neither an affirmation that a company is either well-managed nor free from fraud. I think that's misleading at best, and I think there's a better way to talk about what an audit does, and so I can't support that sentence. And also, it is a little bit confusing in 7.7.4 where it says the audit committee operates confidentially and independently, yet the next sentence says, as an appendage, the board SCA directors can attend audit committee meetings as an observer. That to me is contradictory, and I can't support those 2 sentences.
Well, the first section here where it says an audit is neither an affirmation that a company is either well managed or free from fraud. The free from fraud is part of every audit contract, that they are not affirming or testing or examining if fraud has occurred. That's a different service, so it costs a lot more. You could buy that, but it's more money. And an audit, a firm that loses $100 million can get audited financial statements, and they'll say, yep, the numbers you presented in here are done in accordance to generally accepted principles, and just because it's minus $100 million isn't part of our audit.
I don't disagree with you, Forrest, but in theory, however, in practicality, auditors, HOA auditors do look for fraud. They do. Do they find everything? Is it a fraud audit? No, but they do look for fraud. So to just say point blank, I just think it could be worded better and clarified better. That's all that I'm saying.
Well, if there's then, if you want to suggest better wording as an amendment, then do so.
Not at this time.
Okay.
I'm just saying that the agreement we have with the auditors, they specifically state they are not looking for fraud. If they find it, they'll certainly report it, but it's not an examination for fraud.
All right. Any other comments? Okay, hearing none, let's move to vote on this change, the update to the BPM of section 7.7. All those in favor of the update on the audit committee material of section 7.7 of the BPM signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed?
No.
Motion carries 5-1. Last item is rescinding of the access policy to the emergency preparedness room in the event of emergency. That what? Yes.
So the board approved this policy back in 2019, and for transparency purposes, we want them obviously to rescind it. The emergency preparedness group in the board book underneath the consent calendar has 2 new policies that were there that just clarify the use of the radios and access to the buildings, or to the EPSG area in the event of an emergency. And so those will replace what the board is rescinding today.
Yeah, I think it was the feeling of the board that these were really part of their operational and procedural manual and could obviously be changed and updated without having to go through board action. So I think that, we felt since there had been a previous policy, voted on by the board to make it cleaner, we should rescind that so that that's taken off the books and they can go ahead and put their updated policies in their operation and procedures manual. All those in, okay, motion, Wendy.
I move to rescind the current SCA CAI access policy.
Okay, second. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Okay, motion carries. This brings us now to the last item of the member comment period, where you're permitted to comment on any association issue. And again, the president may interrupt or terminate a member's statement if it's personal, abusive, obscene, irrelevant, or exceeds the time limit. In accordance with the resolution establishing parliamentary procedures adopted by this board in April 2012, attacks on the character, veracity, integrity, or intelligence of other individuals will not be permitted. Comments will not be accepted from owners in advance of the meeting. Comments should be limited to 2 minutes. Do we have any comments?
We have no comments here. Do we have any online? None.
All right. Our next regular board meeting is scheduled for February 24th, 2022 at 1:30 PM in the Delaware Room of the Anthem Center. And it will be held as a go-to meeting as well as in person. With that, I declare the meeting adjourned.